you may remember Barry Jenkins. He did the 2016 Best Picture Oscar winner at the last second, Moonlight. Now, it's 2 years after his sophomore triumph, because I believe that was his second film. Am I right about that?
Moonlight, yes.
Yeah. So Jenkins returns with his next awards contender, If Beale Street Could Talk. It's based on the 1974 novel of the same name by James Baldwin, who I consider one of the strongest writers and activists of the 20th century. If you haven't had a chance, I highly recommend seeking out the documentary I Am Not Your Negro, which came out a couple years ago. It's based on some of Baldwin's ruminations during the civil rights era in the 1960s. It's narrated by Samuel Jackson. It is one of my favorite movies of 2016. I think that was in my top 5, top 10 of the whole year. It's fantastic. So
Good film.
His new film, Barry Jenkins that is called If Beale Street Could Talk. It's very much a love story through and through, but one unlike any you've probably seen before. It's really different. It centers around a young couple in 1970s New York navigating the racism of the justice system as they bring a new life into the world. So one half of the couple, Fonnie, is facing serious jail time to an alleged crime, while his pregnant girlfriend, Tish, works aggressively to help him get his trial and clear his name. Amidst all of this drama, Tish and her family have to contend with Fonnie's religious family, which sees the baby as the product of something wrong and sinful. Here's a clip for If Beale Street Could Talk.
That child is coming. It's your grandchild. I don't understand you. It's your grandchild. What difference does it make how he gets here? The child ain't got nothing to do with that. Ain't none of us got nothing to do with that. That child. That child. That child. That child. That child.
All right, that was from If Beale Street Could Talk. You heard Regina King there in that audio portraying the role of Tish's mother. So if she does not secure an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, I officially redeclare the Oscars as pointless. Joking aside, this is a fantastic cast, and I really do hope that Regina King gets some attention for this. And I think this film is going to get a lot of attention for a lot of different awards on top of Best Supporting Actress, honestly. In this film, you have Kiki Lane starring as Tish, Stephan James as her fiancée Fonnie, along with Tiona Paris, Regina King, as I mentioned, Coleman Domingo, Brian Tyree Henry, Dave Franco, Ed Skrein, Michael Beach, Finn Whitrock, Anuju Ellis, Diego Luna, Pedro Pascal, and Emily Rios. Now, Will Ashton, you haven't had a chance to see this yet, so we may be talking about this film on a later date in more detail. I don't want to go into too much, but I do want to talk about this film because it is the end of the year. I didn't want to wait because I know some people are considering seeing this in limited release. It's in select theaters around the country at the moment, and I think it's going to be hitting your neck of the woods probably in the coming weeks, correct?
Hopefully, yeah. From what I've been told, it is coming close to mid-January, but I'm hoping there's a screening or something before that because I'm very, very excited to check this one out.
I think that you should be. I absolutely adore this film. It is unlike anything that I have ever seen from a filmmaker because, you know, a lot of films that do stories about love and a lot of stories that do, or a lot of movies that do stories about racism, they very rarely put the things together in a way that really makes you understand what people have to lose. Like, when two people don't get together, what is the thing that they lose? What is the thing that gets taken away from them by a society? And it's really hard to adapt James Baldwin. His writing is so specific and so unique. And Will, I know that I think you finished the book, If Beale Street Could Talk? Right,
Great book. One of my favorite reads of the year.
It's so good. I haven't finished it yet, but I've been pouring through it since holiday travel. That was one of the things that I was doing on the plane. And I'm glad I did because it really lends insight into what a great filmmaker Barry Jenkins is, because what he's done here is he's taken a very specific voice, James Baldwin's voice, which is a novel. It's a narrative. It messes with timelines a little bit, but it's sort of straightforward, at least in the parts that I've been going through. And it translates a novel not to a screenplay in the very literal sense, but to poetry. Like, this film is poetry filmmaking. And it's the perfect way, I think, to really evoke what James Baldwin was trying to do with his writing. And I on that level alone, this film, I think, is so important and so fascinating. This is one of those films that I think is going to be dissected and analyzed, probably overanalyzed for years to come, on the way that it uses language outside of just normal dialogue to tell its story. And its story is very simple. I mean, the story is, as I mentioned, Tish is just trying to get this guy out of jail because she just wants to be with him. She has all of these factors to contend with: the justice system, as I mentioned, the family's not getting along. All of these things get in their way of being happy. And you can convey that in a lot of ways. You can convey it through dialogue and Oscar-worthy yelling matches and things like that. But this film uses language in every sense. It uses taste. It uses color, not just sight, but color. Like, what this film does with color is so unlike what other films do. It almost makes every other film that came out this year feel sort of limited in its own canvas. And there are so many filmmaking techniques in here that, you know, it reminds me of Roma, because Roma is a movie that has sort of a similar premise where you have a marginalized woman who becomes pregnant and just sort of has to deal with the man not being there, and then how that affects her future. And Roma is so great because of all the directorial decisions and how it, you know, is experimental filmmaking. And honestly, this film is better than Roma. I think that this film, I really love Roma. I think that's a fantastic film. I love what Alfonso Cuarón did there, but I think Barry Jenkins is doing something similar, but also perfectly different in a way that I think is more satisfying, honestly. And I think that people are going to connect with more. And I don't want to give away a lot of the techniques that he uses here, but there are two things that I'll call out. One is that, oh my word, Barry Jenkins doesn't just film things in a different way for the sake of it. He does it in a way to create emotion. And one specific thing that he does in this film a lot is that he does a lot of close-up shots where you're in the character's face and the character is looking right at you. And a lot of films that do this, it can feel like you're breaking the fourth wall. But what this film masterfully does is it makes you realize that you are seeing this character through the eyes of another character, and then their reaction to seeing you. And it's such a beautiful thing on top of everything else that the canvas of this movie is putting together, where yellow, for example, is such a huge color in this movie. It's so loaded with symbolism and motif and just this general sense that you get whenever you see it. The film has you in its hands, and it's really guiding you along what is in these characters' heads without telling you. And to me, that is filmmaking at its best. That is filmmaking at just working on every level. Now, unfortunately, I can't say that this is better than Moonlight, weirdly enough. And I know that I'm praising it a lot. This film is so great in so many different ways. It really is like a portrait instead of a film. Like, a portrait, for example, you see like for example, like a couple in a portrait, it does feel like everything is sort of put together, and unlike a painting, if that makes any sense. Like a painting, you sort of create the colors yourself. Here, it feels like Jenkins is putting all the pieces in place and letting you run with it. And on that level, it works. My only thing with this movie is that it does meander a little too much here and there. And maybe I just need to see it again. But there's something about the way that it guides its second act into the third act that made me feel like something was sort of missing. And it's still a better film than Roma, and I'm kind of nitpicking it for some structural choices. And the other nitpick that I will say is that there is a section of this movie that takes place in Puerto Rico, obviously very personal for me. And, you know, as a Puerto Rican, there were some things that I took away from this that felt like it was commoditizing or I don't know if that's a good verb, but it was kind of making a commodity out of Puerto Rican culture. And in some ways that sort of rubbed me the wrong way. And I don't think that that's something to necessarily downgrade the film over. I just think it's just sort of a one brush among many. And it didn't disrupt the film all that much for me, but it was something that I sort of called out as maybe because it was so authentic in its own immersive Black world, because this is a world inhabited by living, breathing Black characters who are so human and so complete and multidimensional, so that when it took us to Puerto Rico, there was something about it that I was like, well, I mean, why can't you do the same thing for Puerto Rican culture? And I guess I just was I felt like I was left wanting there. And I'm not sure if that's totally fair. And a big reason for that is Pedro Pascal, I think, is really miscast here. He has a very small role. I don't know why he's in this film. And he just does not evoke to me like what that character was written as, honestly. So that was something that kind of got in my way. But all in all, Will, I can't wait for you to see this one because I'm in love with it. I'm in love with the characters. I'm in love with how the story resolves and where it goes. And I really hope that it lives up to you in terms of how the book pans out, because I haven't finished the book, so I'm not sure how different it is. But one thing I'll say, for example, is that it spends way, way less time on the backstory of Tish and Fonny, like how, they got to know each other as kids. It doesn't spend as much time with that. It does not prioritize the main goal of these characters. Like, these characters are trying to get Fonny out of jail, right? And they make a point of it to say, in any other movie, it's like, well, if we just get the money, we can do this. If we just get him out of jail, we can do this. And this is a movie that's a bit more outside of that box of, because most movies judge success and character resolution by, we wanted the thing, we got the thing. And this is not that movie. And I absolutely love that. It is on par with Moonlight in that way, because Moonlight is such a just totally original breakthrough of a movie in everything that it does. I think that ultimately it's more original, and it's a little bit, I mean, you can't say that it's more original in the sense that it's not adapted from a novel in the same way, but it just has its own style and distinct sort of filmmaking into it that I set Moonlight apart from this one, and they're so different that it almost feels a little unfair to judge their filmography in this way. But all of that said, I appreciate both films. I love both films, and I'm really glad that Barry Jenkins followed Moonlight up with this, because it really is showing the fact that he is easily one of our most promising directors, and he should be allowed to make whatever film he is passionate about, because clearly he knows what he's doing, and he knows empathy in a way that is savant-like. Like, he really understands how to get people to get into other people's heads. And that could be something that could be easily used for evil. And fortunately, he uses it for good. He's putting out great art in the world. And I highly recommend If Beale Street Could Talk. I was between an A- and an A. I'm still processing this movie because those nitpicks are getting in my way and they're keeping me from that A. I hope this becomes an A over the next couple of weeks, but at the moment I'm at a super high A-. This is in my top 10 of the year, so that's a hint. You listened to us for this long, so you get that if you wanted to put in your submissions. But yeah, I don't know where it lands exactly, but it definitely is it's easily one of the best films of the year. I could easily see it win Best Picture. Obviously, it'll get the nomination, and I would be very happy to see it win. And that is If Beale Street Could Talk.
Nice.
Oh, boy. That was a lot to get through, Will. I feel emotionally drained, almost as emotionally drained as I was watching the movie.